Hello, and thanks for joining us for this special presentation of UBM channel, My IT Assessments, 5 Steps to Building a Solution-Based Business in 2013. You know, it's become the go-to for building a solution-focused business, IT network assessments. Top vendors like Cisco and HP have seen the ROI grow for solution providers who do them on a regular basis, and 50 to 1 isn't uncommon, certainly, but there is growing frustration over a process that some partners claim is too difficult and the output too hard to decipher. Today we're going to look at scalable IT assessments and how they uncover some real customer issues, but also some real customer opportunities. This is a live and interactive channel cast, so we invite you to begin submitting your questions at any time. We're going to answer as many of them as we can, time permitting. Those we don't answer live, we will answer via email after today's presentation. Also, we have a survey at the end of today's presentation. You're going to want to stick around for that. And we also are going to be offering one lucky viewer an Amazon gift card worth $100. Now, who couldn't use $100? To which you will be notified via phone after today's presentation. Hello, everyone. My name is Jonas Tichenor, and I am the Content Director for UBM and a CRN contributing editor. And joining me today, we have a very special guest, Jeremy Littlejohn, who is the President and Chief Analyst of Risk Networks Business Technology Analytics. Jeremy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Sure. Thank you, Jonas.
Jeremy oversees over 400 engagements per year and is a Cisco certified inter-network expert. Littlejohn has more than 14 years of experience in IT, specializing in unified communications, LAN, WAN, and data center technology. He presents at international IT industry conferences such as IW500 and Interop, and writes for various publications such as Information Week and Network Computing. Information Week, by the way, is part of our UBM family. Jeremy, we've got a pretty big topic here, and I know that folks, considering 2013 as an opportunity to get involved into solution sales business, so I know that there's a lot of folks looking forward to what we're going to be talking about today.
Fantastic.
So what we're going to do is we're going to get started off with just sort of an editorial overview of sort of solution sales over the past couple of years. It's been going through some pretty big changes because the nature of solution sales has been changing as we've been doing our research. Traditionally, everything was focused on the product. It was really sort of the center of the solution. The idea was to force adoption based on a voice or marketing message that's led by a traditional sales funnel. Potential partners, though, have lots of information at their fingertips. They know what they are looking for, and which has set some new benchmarks out there that have really been set by savvy clients who have a need. They know what it is. They really don't need any marketing noise. It's requiring a new and higher level of engagement in solution sales. And organizations are looking at customer-centric approaches to solution sales in an effort to align with the way buyers are actually buying. And you begin to take on a more consultative role, educating the client. You're assessing their pain and providing value in the actual solution set that you're putting forward. 2 key factors can help here, and that's taking a level of customer intimacy and engagement. In some cases, these require an organizational mindset and sort of a process shift, but it's worth it, and you have to ask a key question: how this change will translate to sales reps at any level. This customer intimacy requires a sales team that's ready to be a consultant, to focus in on the specifics of the pain, how they can assess it, how they can help find it, and then how they can educate and enable solutions and strategies. The other here is engagement. Once issues are identified and solutions enabled, there are some new and highly engaging touch points that are really developed inside of the solution to help create some automated strategy, but that also leads to the ultimate in flattery, and that's increased loyalty, something that you certainly want to have. So that is sort of a high-level view of this sales process. But really, Jeremy, I know a lot of folks are interested in hearing how you guys help to build some of these things, and I know that there's a lot of folks, again, interested in looking at 2013 and the opportunities that they are going to be engaging in and taking it to the next level. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we're going to hear a little bit more about solution selling and how folks can build a successful practice.
Great, and thank you, Jonas. And I do want to say to everyone, again, thank you for attending today. I know it is, as Jonas said, near the end of we're getting near the end of the year. Everyone's trying to get their programs in place for next year, so it's a very, very busy time for everyone. And I appreciate you carving out some time today to attend this webinar. So as Jonas said, there's a huge shift right now around selling methodologies. I actually posted here, this is the corporate executive board, and this is actually taken from an article at the Harvard Business Review that they did for the Harvard Business Review about how solution selling was done. And that really what you needed to move to was inside selling. So I obviously, as we prep for this, thought, well, that's very interesting. I'm about to talk about solution selling, so maybe I should look at why it's done. I didn't realize that. And what we found as I looked at it was, well, they've defined solution selling in a very specific way, and certainly I feel like their definition of solution selling isn't mine, isn't probably yours. It isn't what Jonas just talked about, but it is actually some of what we've been experiencing. So I guess by their definitions, everyone's been doing solution selling for a while, which is I have a customer who's coming to me and basically what amounts to placing an order, right, telling me specifically what needs to be addressed, and then I'm just supposed to fulfill this. Certainly we feel like solution selling is more what they have here wrapped up in insight selling. I think solution selling is kind of like cloud computing. If we asked everyone on this call what it was, we'd probably get hundreds of different answers. What I do know is that there are some very, very specific tenets to successfully executing what we would call solution selling, and those are what Jonas mentioned. We need to be customer-centric. We have to look further than what the customer is just telling us, and we're going to get into some of that today. But what I wanted to talk about first was some of the challenges that our partners face that we see as we interact with them and as they onboard into our program, and see if any of those ring true to you guys, right? See if you can relate to any of the issues that they're experiencing. Because most of them decide first that they want to be a solution sales organization. We're going to do solution selling. They kind of go to bed with that thought, and then they wake up, and when they wake up, reality hits them back in the face, which is this is a very, very complex situation. I have customers who are influenced by their peers. They're influenced by tech media about what they ought to be doing. They're influenced by vendors who are telling them they have to do X, Y, or Z. And then I have my team, and we're all trying to, frankly, to influence them too. We're trying to talk to them about how we can help them, and it becomes a very, very confusing and difficult situation to unwind and to change. The other piece to this is that each of these individual roles has very specific challenges that they're facing. So if we take the example of the kind of leadership role, and again, depending on the size of your organization, this may be a VP of sales, a sales director, regional, it could be the CEO. Wherever we're kind of making these strategic decisions that we want to be solution-oriented, we want to be a solution sales organization, but we're hitting a lot of problems. Our sales process is difficult to manage. We are not really doing a really great job of communicating to customers the value we can bring. We have a great organization. How do we show customers that? And how do we get, this last one is a huge one we hear all the time, how do we get new accounts but still manage to address our existing accounts? Because we've got to do both. We have to grow our business in the current accounts we have, and we have to acquire some new business. But guess what? I can't just go on a hiring spree. I cannot double my head count in the sales organization. If you look at bullets 1 and 2, we're already struggling with that a little bit. So there's a lot of challenges at the executive level as they go to implement a solution sales model or to execute any kind of sales strategy.
You know, before you go on, Jeremy, I just want to interject here that all of the things that you're talking about right now resonate huge. There's an article or a blog that came out by blogger David Brock back in July of this year that talked about the end of solution sales as we know it. And all of the challenges that you're laying out here, he really defined as part of the reason why folks believe that the solution sales business idea, or the traditional model that people are used to, is just sort of it's kind of dead because they're having to completely rethink how they're doing it.
Yeah, and the really difficult challenge to overcome is that we've got challenges at each level. So it's not just a switch we can flip, because being a technology organization, as everyone on this call is. We're involved with technology. We're installing and selling technology. We're supporting technology. It's not a widget. Okay? Right. We can't just sell 100 widgets, put them on a truck, and send them out. It doesn't work that way. It's much more involved, and so there's a few more moving parts. And so as we look to implement any kind of strategy, the challenge is how do we implement that strategy at each of those levels. So if we look at the sales level specifically, not the executive, but this is the regional sales manager, et cetera, these are the problems that they're seeing. Right? And I'll tell you that the number one thing that we see, and we experience this in our own organization, it's all about activity. How do we have, or how can we define an activity that we know will yield results for us, that we can track, that we can use to help underperforming sales members so that we don't have turnover in that role? Right? What are the things we can do that address all of these concerns? The last, and perhaps, certainly I have an engineering background. That's where I came from. So I'll say the most important. People may disagree. But certainly I think at least as important as any of those other roles is the engineering role. Because as I mentioned, we're all technical organizations. We have those roles. Those are key, in many cases, the most important members of our team. They're the ones who actually turn everything we talk about into working technology for our customers. And I can tell you, from my experience in the field, I was that first bullet, right? When we get teams who are talented or individuals who are talented, we use them everywhere. We try and leverage them to be the solution sales model. Our solution sales model is Jimmy, or it's Betty. That's our solution sales model. Well, that doesn't scale, and it doesn't work, and eventually those people burn out, and they quit, or they go get a different job because it's just not something that can be repeated. It's not a way to implement the strategy. The last piece of the puzzle is really the customer. And so if you think your problems are bad, which they all are, you have to think about the customer. Because guess what they're at? They're at the center of all those arrows we drew. They're getting them bombarded everywhere, and yet they still have their own issues to deal with. So they're the ones who have the performance problems. They're the ones who don't have any more budget, or their budget got cut in half. They're the ones who have fewer headcount themselves to support their existing environments. So their struggles are just as big. And this is what really a properly implemented solution sales model has got to try and address. This is some of the numbers from those customers. So I don't just say they're under these pressures. We know they are because we see them every day. And, oh, sorry. I apologize for that. There was our engineering, our first bullet. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I hadn't pressed that button. These are some of the numbers we see in customer environments, okay? The struggles that they're having. There's performance issues. There are architecture issues. If you note there, 48% of the customers we look at, now this is taken from over 2,000 assessments, some of the largest customers in the world. And almost half of them have VMware performance issues. So if you think about all your customers who have VMware, do you think that half those customers know they have these performance issues? Other than to say, well, I'm not doing any more virtualization because what I did so far doesn't work. But do they actually know why, and can you help them solve those problems? So this is what, when we talk about an activity in just a moment that can kind of get us out of this fog, help us address some of these issues, solve some of those problems that we enumerated in the first several slides there for each of those roles. And for us, that's really solution selling, okay? The model that you're going to implement, we're going to put the moniker solution sales on it, which is to say we're going to go into a customer and we're going to change the way we interact. The first thing we're going to do is become customer-centric, and we'll talk about all these in detail in just a few minutes. Right? We're going to put them at the center of it, so that we can work kind of inside out from them to us, as opposed to being one more arrow that they're dealing with and being bombarded with. Second, as you can see, is be proactive. The third is don't just listen, know. The fourth, and perhaps the most important, I had a different title on this bullet when I first did the presentation, which was get some solutions. So we can't be solution sales people if we don't know kind of what our solutions are. And that sounds like a flippant comment, but it's not. Because I know even within our organization, within the other organizations we work with, as you bring in sales teams and account managers to work with customers, do they really understand the solutions that you offer, all of them? Do they know how to talk to a customer about how those solutions align to their issues, from your managed services to your individual vendor partners to maybe cloud services that you're offering? That's a lot to keep track of. So the more we can help them, and you can help them align and communicate that, that's going to make them more effective. And the last piece is maybe the most important. Probably should have made it the first bullet, but it's the last. We'll end with the most important. How about that? Which is to execute a proven process. So giving you something that you can go and do that we know is proven. This will work. If you follow these steps, you're going to have success.
Do you think, Jeremy, that part of the frustration with organizations is that one simple move of becoming customer-centric, of getting off the marketing piece, of getting off the sort of voice that they're supposed to be talking with and asking the right questions? Because that does become a fundamental change, but they got to know what questions to ask, and they've got to know how to decipher the responses they're getting in order to figure out how to make it work and to align and really communicate the solutions out there.
Yeah, I agree, Jonas, and that's part of it. Part of it is probably their training for the sales force. But I'll say that the other part, which is kind of combined, I think what you were just saying there with the third bullet, which is, yes, we have to listen. We have to be customer-centric in listening. But that doesn't mean that the customer knows everything.
Right.
Steve Jobs obviously was famous for saying, hey, if I just listen to my customers, we wouldn't have any of these products. We as professionals, have to go past that and say, well, I'm going to listen, but I'm also going to know. I understand all the different components. Customer may not understand all the different components, but your team does. Let us look at it and know what's happening, and then we can all discuss it. So when we say being customer-centric in that sense, what we're saying is we have to help that customer focus purely on uncovering issues and opportunities for that customer to improve in their environment, as opposed to saying, we think, the thing we need to move is 10 gig Ethernet. Now I need to look for an issue in your environment where you need 10 gig Ethernet. You should get 10 gig Ethernet between your two core switches. Why?
Right.
Do I need that? And so what we need to do when we say be customer-centric is to say, first, let's determine what those needs are that they may not even realize, and then it's going to make it much easier to go back to them with those solutions.
And it positions that intimacy we talked about earlier, because you become a true trusted advisor. Now you've brought value in a way that's different than the competition probably.
Absolutely. And value is a huge piece that we'll talk about as we go through here. There has to be what we call independent value, which is I want to do an activity with you, customer, that in and of itself is going to be valuable for you. And then based on that activity, we'll talk about other ways that I can help you or that we can assist you as you try and work through some of these issues. So transparency on that is a big issue, making sure that they understand, hey, we're going to lay it all out in front of you, and we're going to all look at it together and collaborate on it. That'll go a long way towards building that intimacy. So why are we on this call today? Well, we enable solution selling. Now, I'm going to say two things here. First, whether you call it solution selling, we do a lot of work with Cisco systems, and a lot of the stuff that Cisco does, they call it assessment-led selling, okay, which is slightly different. We certainly consider it part of a solution sales architecture. Doing network assessment is the number one activity, and I say network, I mean all the network, not just the routers and switches. We want to look at servers, hypervisors, applications, all of those unified communications. Doing assessment is the number one activity you can do to drive a solution sales model within your organization. In the technology realm, there's just nothing else. You can hold workshops all day long. You can do these other things. Those are great. I'm not saying they're not valuable, but there is no single activity you're going to do that's going to yield better results for you. And we're basing that on years of experience running hundreds and thousands of assessments for customers where we see routinely an average deal size over $100,000, right, just by doing the assessment. Those are the types of deals that you're going to close. And I'll show you some examples of it as we go through here, because ultimately they have to translate into some sort of activity for you. Now, the second thing I'll say is I'm going to shamelessly promote our product through the rest of this webinar and talk about how we can help you with these areas, okay? Regardless, you ought to think about doing solution or doing assessments as part of a solution sales approach. So whether you use our tool or a different tool, I'll tell you, regardless, that's the number one activity you should be doing. Hopefully, as we go through here, I'll be able to show you why ours would be the best way to do it. But I want to make sure that you understand that first it's assessments, second is how do we do those assessments. This is what it all boils down to. If you noted in the engineering slide I had previously where customers are asking for deliverables, sales teams are saying, my customers need a deliverable. We need to have something that we can work from. What is the common ground that we're going to stand on as we talk about these things? It's really all about getting to some type of common framework and place to start from that's based on the reality within that customer's environment. And that's what our report does. The output of an assessment from MyITAssessment is going to deliver that. It's all about taking and discovering, uncovering opportunities and problems and aligning those with your solutions. And when I say an opportunity, I don't mean an opportunity for you to sell something, even though it ultimately becomes an opportunity for you to provide a solution. When we say opportunities, what we mean is showing a customer where they have an opportunity to improve something. I have the opportunity to do something more efficiently. I have the opportunity to get more out of dollars I've already spent. Most of that's going to involve you helping them do that. But those are the opportunities that we show them. And I put the quote that you see in here because it's really important. People ask us, what's the difference between doing something with your team and doing something with X, Y, or Z other product? And for us, the difference is, are you getting data or information? Are you getting something you can act on with your customer, or are you getting a chart that, again, your engineer is going to take and put into, from 4 different apps and put into a Word file and try and give it to a customer? So what I want to do is go through our 5 steps here and, again, enumerate how we can help you along this path. So the first is to be customer-centric. Really, all you can control in this entire environment is what you see on the left there. You can't control vendors and the media and the peers of the customer, and you can't control the customer, but you can control your team. So within our team, what can we do to be more customer-centric? And for us, that involves implementing what we call our solution arc. This is included in every report that we do. It's what we train our partners on. It's what we feel is the best way for you to engage with the customer. Now, Jonas mentioned a lot of things at the beginning, if you remember, about client loyalty, and we're going to become that trusted advisor, which is providing guidance. And absolutely, you are going to do those things. What we have found, and one of the reasons that solution selling implementations fail, is because people try and jump right to that. I want to be your trusted advisor, and I want to be your consultant on this project. But what have I done to get myself there so you trust me? The best way for you to do that is to follow the first 2 steps, which are very simple steps, but they build on each other, and all of these steps allow you to become a solution selling organization with that customer. The first is solve problems. So if you're engaging with a customer and your sales team, the very first thing out of their, on their proposal is not, here's the list of issues that we've seen that you have. Do you see these? Yes. How can we help you fix them? Then we're going to have a hard time building loyalty. So This is about saying we're going to take a staged approach, and this is the model that we're going to use. What we want to do is make that simple. If we need to get through steps 1 and 2, solving problems, upgrading and refreshing, standardizing environments, getting it into a place that you can provide some guidance and help that customer, then we got to help you get there quickly. So we've got to be real to the point, as you can see here, about where the problems are that you can go in and fix, and how do you fix them. So that's part of our deliverable to you and to your customer, is that list and the very specific places where those problems exist, so you can start to move through that arc. If you wonder what customers think of that, you can kind of read these quotes. I won't read them to you guys on the webcast here, but customers love that. That's what they want. They have monitoring tools. Okay, they all, I would say 75 to 80% of the customers we work with already have network monitoring. Some of them have managed services, but they already have network monitoring. What they didn't have was a list of issues that they can fix and work with their solution partner to fix, and that's what they wanted. They want to get that so they can start going on it. Okay? So that's very, very effective, and that's really the easiest way for you to become customer-centric, is to start working and say, first conversation of the new year, let's find out what problems you have and let's get them fixed. Then let's get you standardized. Then, once we've done that for you, let's talk about where you want to go. And by the way, we've got some business intelligence, which I'll show you in a few minutes. We've got some business intelligence on that I think might help influence where we go. So the next step is be proactive. Now, I put this in here because everybody says we want to be proactive. And I had a chart or an image up earlier of all those arrows with the customer. And that was busy in and of itself. The issue is you don't have one customer. You have 100 customers or more, 1,000. So you may be thinking, great, Jeremy, I'm all for doing this, but if I'm going to do that, how do I, you're telling me to be proactive. I just can't scale that. I don't have a bunch of engineers sitting around doing nothing that can go sit with the customer and do an assessment with a tool. Okay. I don't even have enough salespeople to go sit with the customers and do that. So I have to be able, if I'm going to be proactive, I have to be able to scale, because that's what allows me to be proactive, to touch those customers who I haven't touched in 6 months and give them something of value, and then use that to work on my solution sales with them. So this is how you do that. And I apologize, my text on my slide is a little bit jumbled there. But what I did here was a little bit of a screenshot from our platform. 70% of our partners have the assessments that they do for their customers deployed by the customer. The customer does it because they want to do it, and I'll show you that stuff in a minute. The customer that they know what they're going to get, and they're excited to get it. So help that part process going. It can scale as big, so you don't have to worry about what license did I get. I'm going into Coca-Cola this week, and next week I'm going into Sally's Bike Shop, and next week after that to Bob's Flower Shop. It doesn't matter. We can scale big, scale small. You don't have to install something different if you're going to do an enterprise network versus a smaller network, and it's all cloud-based. So there's nothing for you to tote around. It's on demand. It solves all of that scalability issue for you, okay, so that you can be proactive. You can feel comfortable going to all of those customers and saying, yes, we want to do this for you. I know we haven't spoken, again, in 6 months, but going into next year, we want to see how we can help you. We have an assessment that we can do for you. Would you like to get started? Okay, and we'll go through some of that positioning later in this presentation. The other thing you can do is collaborate online. So your engineers are going to need to be involved with this assessment. Your Windows engineers, your VMware guys, your network guys, they need to participate. So does the customer. But we can't all huddle around a laptop like it's a fire and we're warming our hands. We need to be able to work from where we're at. So having an online collaboration portal basically that allows your team to see what's happening at the customer's location, the customer to see it. They can communicate back and forth. They can review information. And if you notice here in the slide, we maintain your brand throughout that whole process, because this is about building your brand, about establishing you in that solution sales role and that consultative role. So we want to maintain that for you and for the customer throughout the entire process. The last proactive, again, is about scale, which is, okay, I'm good with all that, but I have to get everything. In other words, it's not enough if I just do the network with one tool, servers with another tool, if I got to go back out and get the others. So I need to be able to gather all that information, all that business intelligence, that list of problems across everything all at once. And that's what we allow you to do. So you're able to gather all those pieces that you're going to use. Now, internally within your team, you may have to then divide that data between those expertise groups. But what you don't have to do is do the activity multiple times. Because, again, the activity is the most important thing. Solution sales is all about an activity that we can repeat with the customer across all of our teams. So here's a screenshot. When I talk about a list, some of you may have been saying, okay, well, what does he mean by list? This is it. This is our list. This is part of our list, I should say. We try and make it very simple. We check for common issues, and I'll show you another screenshot of the report in just a minute. We're looking for common issues, problems that the customer has. Your team will get so comfortable with this report because it's the same. That's the other nice thing. Every time you do it with a customer, it's going to be the same. Well, except when we add things, but you know, it's not something you have to reinvent each time. And so your team gets very comfortable delivering it, understanding what solutions you like for those particular problems, and it's very clear to the customer where they have challenges and where they don't. So the third part of this is all about knowing and not just listening. And this is a part, we're going to get a little business intelligence and a little bit technical, but I think it's important to see kind of when we do an assessment with you for a customer and we're bringing your team back information about that customer and what's important in that customer, I want to show you here where you're not getting left off short of the goal. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is opportunities, knowing opportunities within the customer environment. So understanding if I think a customer might be a good opportunity for unified communications, let's say, but I don't really know, so I'm going to go and talk to them. And I am going to listen about what they do, but I also want to know something. So this is 147 random assessments I picked for this. 90% of those customers had some component of unified communications. They either had IM and desktop chat clients, or they had VoIP phones, or they had video conference units. But only 12% had all of them. So there's a huge gap there between either people who started with some unified communications or don't realize that they even have unified communications. And what they're looking to do, or what you guys can look to do with them, is build that. They may not understand that that's the situation they're in. In a lot of cases, we work with IT guys who are very surprised to know, especially in the state and local government, they're very surprised to know that they have video conference units because the courthouse bought one 2 years ago and is using it for depositions, but it doesn't, you know, it's not under their umbrella. But if it were, then that would change their approach to some UC. What I also found interesting was 48% of customers that we look at have Skype. Again, almost half have Skype. What does that mean? It means they're using UC today. So that helps you as you're talking with the customer and being customer-centric. When you get to that provide guidance section, you're saying, okay, let's talk about UC because you're already using it. You may not be controlling it, but you're using it. So what do we want to do with that? The other really interesting thing I found when I looked at these numbers was that almost half of those people who had Skype also had either Cisco, Avaya, or Nortel UC systems deployed, meaning they spent money on an enterprise, you know, UC platform, but then they're still using Skype at the desktop. So again, for those of you who are Avaya, Cisco, and Nortel. All right, channel partners, or you're working with those teams and saying, how do we attach different applications to those? How can we help customers optimize? There's your opportunity. You've invested in this platform, but we still have this over here. How do we marry these two? So understanding, again, knowing and not just asking and listening, even though asking and listening is important. I'll show you a quick other example. Again, people ask us, how are we different? So here what we're talking about is packet loss, and we spend a lot of time on packet loss. It's a performance metric for networks. And what we're looking at here is that packet loss on 100 megabit interfaces occurs primarily at 84% and up utilization. That is totally not surprising, right? We all assume that. When we overutilize interfaces, we drop traffic. Makes total sense. Great. When we talk about gigabit interfaces, 91% of all packets dropped on gigabit interfaces get dropped at under 50% utilization. Wow. Now, that doesn't mean all of it, but the vast majority of times where we see underperforming network pieces that are gigabit, they're happening at less than 50% utilization. It makes no sense unless you go one step further and know that 36% of every customer we look at has oversubscribed line cards. These are just old architectures in their network. They're out there. Now, I'm not picking on Cisco here, but we see a lot of these particular Cisco models. There's other vendors who have them that we check for, but this one is specific to Cisco. And as you can see, the ones in red are oversubscribed. The oversubscribed line cards are the second most prevalent line card we see. So these are areas, again, within an environment that a customer has, that you go to the customer and say, how are things going? Well, things aren't going so well, or we're having some performance issues, but we're not using any bandwidth, right? And so, it must be something else. Well, no, it might be this. The other thing that you see is they say, well, I need to go from 1 gig to 10 gig because 1 gig isn't handling it. Well, in this case, what we really need to do is get you 1 gig, not 1/8 of 1 gig. So this is a pretty technical example, but these are some of the things that we check for in your customer's environment that, again, help you get really close to solving those problems, getting them upgraded, refreshed, and now providing them some guidance in there. And your team doesn't have to investigate this. We've done that for you. We've built that into our platform so that you're getting just those results that you need. I'll quickly show, because some people, as we talk to them about packet loss in particular, they're not sure how big of an issue that is. And so I usually will have a slide like this, and this is in our report for customers too. So as you guys engage with them and they say, well, doesn't everybody have packet loss? Well, there's a difference between having packet loss that's just statistical packet loss, electrical error rates, versus packet loss is introduced by some either architecture or performance issue. And as you can see, it has a dramatic impact on application throughput. So it's a great knob for you guys to turn. Okay, so now we've become customer-centric. We have our framework. We know how we're going to work. We've been proactive. We can scale and reach all these customers. We now know what some of their issues are, and we can work through those with them. The next thing we need to do is talk about how we're going to do that. How do we align solutions that we have to these problems? Now, I'm going to show you an example here, and again, sorry that slide bumped down on us. This is from an actual Cisco partner. This is 1 quarter, and I say a Cisco partner specifically because our partners pick affinities. You can pick an affinity. You can say I'm a Cisco partner. I'm an HP partner, and that's what I want. That's my affinity for those, and those are the ones that, from a standpoint, will display. They ran for a quarter. Okay? This is how many times we showed different solutions to their team and their customer that align directly to problems or opportunities. Now, your mix would probably be different. Really, the most important one for us is the one in the top left there, the partner services. Almost 3,000 times their customers saw their services, very specific services, like managed services, lined up to actual problems they had. And so if you think over the last quarter, how many times have your customers seen your solutions and how they solve problems for that customer actually has? It's a very, very powerful tool. This is what that looks like. Okay? So when we show an issue in our report, we're showing a customer how many of those issues they have. We also, as a side note, show them how many of their peers have it, just so that they know where they stand. And then we're also going to show them those solutions. And again, it's all about you being able to get your solution there. This is what we do. This is how we can help. So for that executive who's concerned about how do I communicate what we do to customers on a consistent basis so that my newest sales rep and my sales rep who's been here the longest, right, I can get a much better baseline for what they're going to present to my customers, this is how you can do that. Lastly, I'll show you, you can get BI for your businesses too, for your customers. So here I'm showing across several different partners, basically, the mix of different servers that run VMware. All right, so that you can think about within my own customer base, what types of servers do they have? Right? What do I need to support? I want to do managed services. What are the most important things for me to support for them? What are the vendors I need to make sure I include with that? So being able to get that information across all your customers so that you can better tailor your solutions to them and align it directly to what they actually have. It also gives you, as you bring in new customers, the ability to see how well are we going to be able to absorb them. This is what they have. These types of solution alignments yield results. So this is quotes again from a partner that's been running with us for a while. They do these assessments programmatically as we've described them in this webinar, and they see huge results. In sometimes some difficult, I won't say difficult products to sell, but there's certainly complex value propositions for some of the things that they're doing. And so being able to get all of that information in one place and, again, align that solution to real problems makes it that much easier for them. AdCap is one of our best partners, one of the best partners in the world. And they use us in the same way. It's a programmatic approach where they go to their customers, help uncover issues, fix those issues for the customer, grow that business, and grow loyalty. And they use it, as I was mentioning in my example, in a lot of cases to onboard for their managed services, and then also to do quarterly business reviews for the managed services. The last section we want to talk about is executing a program and executing a proven process. So this is, again, about, I've given you a lot of things today, certainly a lot of areas where we feel that we can help you as you take and implement a solution sales strategy next year. What are the activities that I can do? As I mentioned before, assessments is the #1 activity. If then you're going to implement assessments on your own, great. If you prefer to use a proven process that's clearly laid out, that's what we have, and that's what I'll talk about quickly here. We've tried to make this process as simple as possible. This is one way that the process works. Your customer is invited to an assessment. I did this 6 times today. There were 6 customers today that I invited to assessments to run. And so we invite them. They come to run the assessment. They're able to download the appliance. Your team collaborates with them, and then at the end you have reports that you're reviewing with them. Very, very simple. There are at least 6 other ways to do that process that we train you on as part of our program, because your environment's going to be different. It's not going to be the same as everyone else's. And so the way you'll implement will no doubt have its own tweaks. So our platform expands for that and allows you to do those things. But the most important piece is, do we have then a way to work, again, that framework, that solution arc? Do we understand how we're attaching to the customer from a solution sales perspective? And do we have the data to fill those activities? I'm going to give you just some examples that our partners use. The trade show came from our team. We recommended it to a partner, and they've done it, and it's been hugely successful. So they go to trade shows, and they walk the floor, just like we all do, handing out cards. People come to their booth, drop a card in the bucket, try and win the squeezy stress toy or whatever they've got on their table. And instead, what they started doing was saying, you know what, instead we're going to start an assessment with you right now. We'll set it up. They pull out their iPad. They set up the assessment, send the customer an invite. Hey, customer, by the time you get back to your desk on Monday, you'll have an invite. You can start this assessment, and in a week, we can be talking about solving problems for you. That's a very, very powerful way to engage a customer. It's still customer-centric, but it's cutting out so much of that fluff along the way. Some of our partners use website call to action, so many of you may have on your website today a network assessment. We do a free network assessment, or we do a network assessment as the first stage of any engagement. And some of you may have very mature network assessment practices. I can tell you I've requested information from some partners sometimes about those assessments, and there's a bit of a scramble over there to try and figure out who would even own that process. So if you're in that position, that's okay. That you're doing, the assessments you clearly see are the right way to go. The easiest thing to do here is just flow that call to action right into our platform, and you can begin to deliver those right away. The last, as I've mentioned several times, is the managed service. So onboarding customers, helping to uncover opportunities for managed service, because one of the best ways to show a customer they need managed services, frankly, is to show them very gently with a very objective report, what issues they have, and candidly how they're not doing a great job of managing some of that today, or where they're struggling, and letting them know in that report, our managed services can help with this. So getting that value proposition across to them when it's fresh in their mind and they're looking at an issue that they're having. So those are 3 ways that you can work a program. Again, we have others that we onboard and train with, and that we do co-marketing with our partners on. But I wanted to just give you some examples. And again, internally, if you're doing your own piece, you can use these too. There's no not patented or anything like that, right? You can use those as good ways to drive your own business around solution sales. So to recap, really the keys to solution selling are that we get customer-centric, we're proactive, we don't just listen, we know things about customers, we align and communicate solutions, that's part of the solution selling, and then that we have a process, an activity that we can do, that we can track, that we can report on, that's repeatable, that's scalable, whatever that is, whatever that process is for your team. And certainly network assessments have been historically the best way to do that, and then the MyITAssessment.com platform is a fantastic way for you to be able to execute that strategy with your customers.
Jeremy, great stuff, and appreciate you spending some time here. I mean, you went into an extreme deep dive, and I think we started off with a great conversation around becoming more customer-centric and how you do that. How do you create that loyalty? How do you create that level of intimacy and engagement? And I appreciate the solutions that you guys provide, because I think it does create an opportunity to hit on all those levels and then even go beyond it. The trusted advisor piece, I mean, if we hear anything more from our VARs, we hear a lot about the fact that they know that they have to become that trusted advisor to not just understand what the overall pain is, but how they can help align solutions and take folks through that process. So I really appreciate all your time and information today.
Sure, thank you.
We do want to take a look at some questions if you have time to hang out for a few more minutes.
Absolutely.
And we want to remind folks, and I'm going to push out a feedback survey, so we'd love to get some folks to fill that out while we're going through some of these questions. And there's still time if you want to submit your question to us. You can do so using that submit button. I'm going to start off with Isaac, who's asking, is your assessment tool branded with the partner's info for customer use or for customer facing?
Yes, it is. So again, we want to help you position your solutions with the customer. We don't do solutions. So absolutely it is. All of the deliverables are branded with your logo and name. And then it was probably a little bit hard to see in the presentation, but actually the portal, the online portal is branded with your information also, your logo and information, so that even when the customer is interfacing online with the assessment, that your brand is being reinforced to them.
Okay, next question is coming from Larry. Does this assessment provide security information?
Yes, it does. It is not, I would not consider it specifically just a security assessment. There's no penetration test aspect to it. We don't do a lot of aggressive OS fingerprinting and port scanning. There are tools that do that, and those are fairly specialized. They're typically something that customers are looking specifically for. We do provide security information within there, such as security vulnerabilities in network software for routers and switches. But I would not necessarily classify it as a security assessment, even though that's part of the deliverable.
Okay, next one is coming from Rashid. How do you position this activity with customers? What objections do they typically have? Good question.
Yes, that is a good question. So this is, if you'll remember at the beginning of the presentation, we kind of talked about independent value. Mm-hmm. And being able to give a customer something that, regardless of whether they do anything else with you, this is valuable. It's useful for you. It answers a lot of questions that the customer's CIO may have or IT director or CEO has. So the first thing that we often do, and we encourage our partners to do, is send them a sample. Show them what they're going to get. I would say that in 90% of the cases, once we've shown a customer the sample of what they're actually going to get, they're ready to move forward. And that's something that they, again, candidly, they don't get a lot of times from kind of ad hoc assessments. We're going to do an assessment. What am I going to get? Well, you give them a bullet list and say, okay, well, I don't really know what that looks like, and I need to understand what that looks like. Ours is different. You're going to be able to send them a sample of exactly what they're going to get. They can browse it online, again, on our portal, which is branded for you, so they can see a sample report on your branded page if you'd like to direct them there. And once they see that, they understand exactly why they want to do it. So again, that's what I would encourage you to do. Now, we do get sometimes objections. Customers have questions about security. Customers have questions about, can it do X, Y, or Z? On the security front, we provide tons of information on our web portal about security. We're very security conscious. We, as I mentioned before, run over 2,000 assessments. So we have a lot for the very, very large financial institutions, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, government, National Guard offices, et cetera. So we've run in some of the most secure environments in the world, and we can actually provide you with some of those references if you need them as you engage with customers about security. But usually what they're looking for is that the process is documented and that they can understand it. So that's available on our website so they can see it. Okay.
Can folks find cost breakdown and that sort of thing on your website as well, or do they have to speak with a consultant?
For cost breakdown, certainly if they'll email info@MyITAssessment.com, we'll respond to them and get them that information. We don't have it on the web portal today simply because the web portal is a customer-facing portal. So it's not on that portal today. However, again, if you'll email us, we will certainly reach out to you and provide you that information, as well as answer any additional questions.
Okay, cool. So we got a couple of questions along the same lines. This one's coming from Maddie. How long does it normally take to complete an IT assessment, and how long after an assessment is completed before result and report is ready?
Okay, so the average completion is 3 to 7 days. You can finish an assessment whenever you want. You're controlling it. You and the customer controlling it, start, stop. You can do it from the web portal or the virtual appliance at the customer, either way. We only recommend 3 to 7 days, so you get some sampling of performance, right? You want to get probably more than just an hour or two to draw any good conclusions. We also have partners who run them up to 3 weeks. So there is really no end point on how long you run the assessment, but we do recommend that you run it for about 3 to 7 days.
Okay,
minimum.
Next question is...
Oh, and I'm sorry, John, I apologize. Hold on one second. I just want to answer the second part of that. How soon after the report?
Yeah, how soon? How soon? Sorry about that.
That's okay. No, it runs immediately. All of our reports run immediately on our platform. It really kind of depends on the size of the customer. They're typically available within 6 hours of finishing, sometimes a lot faster. If it's a huge customer, a multinational or something, it may take 24 hours for all the reports to run. Okay?
Okay. What access is required to run these assessments for customers? Thanks for that question, Sarah.
Yeah. So you're going to need to be able to provide SNMP streams for the network equipment. You're going to need to be able to provide Windows login information for their Active Directory. The customer will put all that in typically to the appliance. That's why it's, again, a good idea to have them just deploy it. They have all those credentials. We do VMware vSphere logins for VMware, so vCenter login basically. Cisco Call Manager login for that. So those are the main credentials that will need to be provided if you're doing any of those application-specific pieces. Any of those can be opted out of. So if the customer says, I don't want to do Windows, they don't have to. We'll still get all the rest of the great info. Or if they say, I don't have VMware, that's fine. They just opt out of that section and they can move through.
Okay, next question. Can we white label or OEM these assessments?
Absolutely. We have customers who do it, partners rather, who do it every day. So again, all those reports are branded. Your portal is branded. It is a co-branding. I should say that instead of white label. There's still some MyITAssessment because that's the platform. But again, we're not doing solutions. We're not promoting to the customer. We're just letting them know where to go so that they can get the information for the assessment with your team. But all of the other piece of it is completely branded for your organization.
Okay, Mike's asking if your assessments cover virtualization, data storage, and backup best practices.
We cover virtualization opportunities and virtualization performance for VMware. Okay, storage performance and capacity across all vendors. And then, I'm sorry, what was the third one? I apologize. That was a little fast for me on the question.
Backup best practices.
Oh, backups. So we do check for, we do some analysis on backup. We don't check necessarily best practices. In other words, are you backing up every week or when are you doing incremental? What we are looking for is anomalies in the backup system. So backups failing for different reasons, backups not firing off, and those types of things. So we're going to let you know if we see those. If a customer's backups are all running perfectly, we're not, for this assessment, analyzing whether they should be using a different tape rotation. I think what you guys can then do is use that to say, the first step is this assessment, all these things look great. We don't need to fix any problems here. But now when we get to providing guidance, we can talk about what are your DR plans, and maybe we need to adjust that.
Okay, we've got time for one more. We'll make it quick. Healthcare clients have to abide by HIPAA regulations. Is your organization HIPAA compliant?
So all of our, well, we don't have any personally identifiable health information. We also don't have any, for example, PCI information. So we don't do any packet capture. We don't actually store any data about the customer or anything within their system. So in technical terms, we are not required to be HIPAA compliant. With that said, or PCI compliant for that matter, with that said, all of our data centers, they're not necessarily HIPAA compliant, but they're all SAS 70 audited data centers. And again, we can provide references for in the healthcare field for hospitals and pharmaceuticals that we've run at. Since we don't collect that information, it usually is not any issue. Again, they want to see the security pieces that we provide. Everything we do is encrypted every piece of data that's ever touched is encrypted. So we provide them all of that, which candidly would be HIPAA compliant if we were to submit it. But again, since we don't collect any of that information, we don't fall under that requirement. And we certainly do not violate their HIPAA compliance by using, they're not violating their own compliance by using us.
All right. Well, unfortunately, Jeremy, that's all the time that we have, and I'm rushing to a close here. I want to thank my guests again, Jeremy Littlejohn, Chief Analyst and Co-Founder of Risk Networks. Thanks for being with us today, Jeremy.
Sure. Thank you very much.
This presentation will be available in its entirety on demand. My name is Jonas Tishner, and for all of us here at UBM Channel, we hope you've enjoyed today's ChannelCast. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And again, if your question didn't get answered, it will be answered via email after today's presentation. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.